You're watching Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner. Here today, Melissa Francis, Fox Business Network anchor Dagan McDowell, syndicated radio host and Fox News contributor Leslie Marshall. In the center seat, former acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker is with us. We'll have full reaction from everyone around me. But first, let's go to congressional correspondent Chad Pergram live on Capitol Hill. This is a huge moment.
That's right. Well, this is the debate about the arguments, the framework, and this is going to be a proposal put forth by the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to try to wrap up these arguments in 12-hour batches over the next 4 days. This is something that Adam Schiff, the lead manager, the chair of the Intelligence Committee, does not like.
There is a wealth of evidence to present here, and we should have the opportunity to present the case as the House chooses to present its case. Not to go late into the evening when Senator McConnell evidently hopes the public may not be watching.
But Article 1, Section 3 of the Constitution gives the Senate the power to try all impeachments. The Democratic managers today wrote to White House counsel Pat Cipollone, arguing he is a material witness to the case. They say it's Cipollone's obligation to disclose to Chief Justice John Roberts potential bias and conflicts. Meantime, Republicans have their own issues with Adam Schiff, the lead impeachment manager. Here's John Ratcliffe, Republican of Texas.
What they don't know is that the whistleblower was not truthful under oath about his contacts with Congressman Schiff. And there is a transcript that reflects that. It's the Inspector General's transcript. It's the only one out of 18 transcripts that hasn't been released by Congressman Schiff. So there is a cover-up there, and that is what prevents a fair trial.
Now, Chuck Schumer is going to try to put forth a series of amendments to alter this prospect of these sessions running deep into the night, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. We're also told in the past couple of hours there will be a closed session later today, and that's probably where senators will hash this out. We're told there might be an effort to try to shrink the time rather than these 24-hour sections to what I was told single digits. How they would get there, I was told, well, it depends how cranky they are, Harris. Back to you.
We've seen plenty of that, so we know what to watch for. Chad Pergram, thank you very much. Good to see you.
Harris.
Matt, so a couple of questions. One about these rules and maybe something that stands out that you think will be a big jumping point for them today.
Well, it's going to be very interesting. The proposed timetable has 12-hour sessions, 24 hours on each side, so 4 days, starting at 1 in the afternoon, ending at 1 o'clock in the morning. And this is a concern that somehow this is going to be done under the dark of night. But really, the question is there that much to talk about? Is there 24 hours of a case in chief to present?
Matt, these are politicians.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they are, but at the same time, they're trying to effectively prove their case to the Senate. I think the most interesting thing today on these rules is that the House managers together with the president's legal team are the ones that are going to be arguing it, and the senators are going to have to sit there quietly, not debating.
And there's penalty if they talk.
There is, and so this is going to be very hard for these senators. You talk about politicians wanting to talk. These senators, you've seen it. It manifests in these press conferences.
Real quickly before we open it up to the couch, I said two things. That was one. The other is in my notes from Chad Pergram, and he sends these out as he's talking with people on the Hill. Keep an eye on how Chief Justice John Roberts presides. And on the lower left-hand part of your screen, you will repeatedly see two women swinging around in their chairs on the dais, whispering to Roberts and giving advice, passing messages. They are the Senate parliamentarian and assistant parliamentarian. How does this work?
That's interesting,
right?
Yeah.
Well, I love Chad's notes.
The Senate and the House always operate under the rules that the majority passes, and following those rules and the rules of parliamentary procedure are very important. And it's the only way that these things actually conclude is the time and who can speak and who can't speak. And so they are going to help the presiding officer, the Chief Justice, make these rulings if necessary. But ultimately, the Chief Judge does not have a lot of authority or responsibility. He just pretty much gets to call votes and see where the majority comes out.
Leslie, I would ask you, Matt just brought up the press conference beforehand, and Dick Durbin stood up there and he said a majority of Americans are calling for the president to be removed. And if that were true, there would be Republicans joining the Democrats because they would be afraid that they were going to lose their job. I mean, if that were true, they would be confident to let this go to the election because he would certainly lose. I mean, how do you think he makes that argument? How do you respond? Do you think the majority of Americans Americans really want the president to be removed?
It depends what poll you look at and what day. And this comes from yesterday, a 51% poll that stated the majority. Yeah, again, when you look at what is the sampling group of any poll, right? Do we believe any poll nowadays, especially since 2016? This is what I would say to your point regarding the votes. People can say how they're going to vote, and then people vote. And sometimes both left and right, because you have some Democrats that are in red states that they have to worry about re-election. But McConnell, I think, has a harder time here with Republicans. He has a balancing act. There are 35 Senate seats up. 23 of them are Republicans, and a handful of them are in blue districts now, or districts that are very purple. And there are moderate Republicans there whose states and people in their state who want witnesses. So you might see some of the Republicans come over. But at the end of the day, I certainly think that McConnell has votes over Schumer's Democrats.
Dagan, what are you watching for?
I'm watching to see how this plays out today, because this resolution introduced by the majority leader, Mitch McConnell, you wouldn't think he would introduce it unless he knew he had the votes ahead of time, and that would be a simple majority. As the Democrats like to say, elections have consequences. Well, indeed they do, because there are 53 Republicans in the Senate, a majority in the Senate. And then, of course, the vice president is the president of the Senate, who would vote with. That's why they need
break
votes.
Any tie potentially.
Right. So Andy McCarthy wrote something interesting about, as this plays out, about as long as the rules provide for the possibility of subpoenaing and interviewing new witnesses at some point, and the way this resolution that Mitch McConnell wrote plays out, it's at the end of the trial. The Democrats are not prejudiced if that issue is deferred until after the Senate considers the case, as it was actually charged by the House. That is very important. Every single one of those senators should have to listen to this case and decide it on its merits. The 2 articles of impeachment that don't include any criminal act.
So, what's interesting about that, Matt, that's what Senator Marco Rubio was saying. He was like, look, before we introduce more voices and all of this, let's just look at the current scope of the case.
Yeah, anyone who supports, at this point in time, more witnesses or more documents is saying the House did not complete their investigation and sent over incomplete articles of impeachment. And that's concerning, that the way it's designed is the House is supposed to do the investigation, and then the Senate's supposed to essentially take that evidence and vote by 2/3. And that's why these polls that are close to 50% or less for removal of the president suggest that there is not this overwhelming groundswell of removal that the founding fathers intended.
So, but I think also, and correct me if I'm wrong, and Dagan just pointed to this too, the process, I understand it, is supposed to work because there is something that's in place that the president should be judged by and against, a crime, misdemeanor, whatever it is, right? It's not polling.
That's true, and this is the first time that impeachment articles have been passed on a purely partisan vote that didn't allege any crimes, and that's fundamentally the problem.
Real quick, what I wonder is, if you said assume the facts, assume the allegations are true, would you vote for removal? If you went around the Senate and you did that, I wonder if he would be removed or not, even if you assume the facts are true, the allegations are true.
You can't take out the red versus blue, and even assuming in your heart of hearts that these allegations are true, and to some extent we know the facts, we don't know the president's motivations, his intent, but we know what the facts are alleged, and ultimately I think Republicans are going to support this president. Democrats have opposed him since he was elected, and we're right back where we started.
Yeah, and you're getting a nod from Leslie Marshall on the couch too. Okay.
Fox News alert: President Trump adding 8 of his strongest GOP allies to the House, in the House, to his impeachment defense team. They are not expected to present statements on the Senate floor, but will instead be a resource for Trump's attorneys. Among them is Texas Republican John Ratcliffe, who was involved in both phases of House inquiry before the Intel and Judiciary Committees. Listen.
They can't make constitutional arguments because they don't have any. This is going to be like killing a fly with a sledgehammer. The House Democrats had a weak case, even on a slanted playing field where they made the rules, changed the rules, and broke the rules to their advantage. On a level playing field, it's going to get ugly. I expect a short trial, no witnesses, an early acquittal for President Trump.
And we want to show you this because it just happened a short time ago. House aides are now wheeling over the impeachment documents. Look, that's the photo. Over to the Senate for the trial. I don't know. They have not heard of email. There's something, digital records. What do you think of the additions to the president's team? Smart, good, unnecessary?
Yeah, really smart, and especially John Ratcliffe and several others, Doug Collins included. John and I, Ratcliffe and I, were U.S. attorneys together in the Bush administration. I have a great admiration for him, and I really think that they are going to be a very important resource. And they're also going to provide that voice of people that are in the room during the entire proceedings and then can speak publicly about it.
Meanwhile, former Whitewater prosecutor Paul Rosenzweig out there slamming the president's impeachment defense. Listen to this.
I, at this point, see President Trump's response to the impeachment as completely outside of the box of normal discussion. It reads like nothing so much as one of my friends said, the scream of a wounded animal raging against the tide.
What do you think?
You know what? I want to get a quick reaction, and then I have a question for Leslie.
That sounds just like somebody trying to partisan posture.
Do they need to do that? It's so partisan already.
Yeah, they don't, but that's exactly what that response is.
So, Leslie, how are Democrats doing? Because one of the things you do is you'll look at the messaging. The Republicans seem to be shoring up their messaging side here. How are the Democrats doing?
Well, if you're looking at voters, I mean, this doesn't matter to Democrats or Republicans or independents or the swing state voters. Right now, when you look at the stats, I mean, Democrats have a more engaged and excited base where you have a higher fundraising
around
at this point in time.
Oh my gosh, who has more fundraising around this than the President of the United States? Have you seen those numbers?
Yes, but Nancy Pelosi's been bringing in the money. And I don't think it's just based on this, because at the end of the day, the voters really aren't going to vote based on impeachment. And that's why Mitch McConnell, a lot of people are saying, hey, Senator McConnell, you might win this impeachment, you might get your acquittal, but you might lose your majority in the Senate.
I mean, Dagan, let me ask you about the messaging, though, because mainly what Democrats are doing is they're complaining about the process. They're saying it's in the dead of the night, that it's not a fair trial. It's what the Republicans were doing on the other side, and Democrats were saying when you don't like the facts, you talk about the process. Now they're doing the same thing. What do you think?
The dead of night is better because the American people can see it versus a skiff. I would point that out, that people can tune in and watch it and see for themselves. You hear the words like cover up, cover up, cover up from the likes of Chuck Schumer and all of his and
Nancy Pelosi,
the female and male counterparts, both in the Senate and Democrats in the House. I'm surprised they haven't concocted a little Nixon emoji. That's why they use that. They're trying to equate this president with Richard Nixon. I'll just point out that one thing I wanted to add, yes and remove on Trump impeachment and removal, it's still underwater. That yes is 47.3%, 47.5% is no. So when somebody says, oh, a majority of Americans want this president removed, the Real Clear Politics average does not say that.
Yeah, so what the majority, and a pretty healthy number too, agree on is that the president did something wrong. But the big question is, did that deserve impeachment in the House? And further, would it deserve removal in the Senate? And that's where those numbers start to go below water. People are like, well, no, because this is who we elected. If we got an election coming up in months, let the people decide.
That goes back to that most essential question that I said last block, which is sort of, if you assume the allegations are true, do you want the president removed? I don't know what the vote would be in the Senate. That would be interesting to see. That's like the question in my mind.
And the Constitution has the American people choose the president.
Yeah.
And I think the American people are very reticent to have that power to pick the president taken out of their hands, especially when they have a chance. It
requires a supermajority to impeach a president and remove him from office. And that means a bipartisan consensus. And the Democrats do not have that. 20 votes is what they need, and nobody expects that would happen.
To be debating whether you should allow witnesses is to be debating whether you should have a cover-up by definition. Any senator who votes to deny a witness, who votes to deny evidence, is voting to cover up the president's crimes and subversion of the Constitution. They are afraid of what the witnesses will say.
House impeachment manager Jerry Nadler there going after Republicans, saying that they are trying to block witnesses at the Senate trial. This is President Trump's attorneys and GOP allies are reportedly working on a plan B to ensure former National Security Advisor John Bolton does not testify publicly. The Washington Post reports one strategy would be to, quote, move Bolton's testimony to a classified setting because of national security concerns, end quote. Meanwhile, the Democratic managers are now claiming that the president's lead impeachment attorney, Pat Cipollone, is a material witness and must disclose any relevant firsthand knowledge. Matt, what about that?
These are all interesting theoretical questions. Ultimately, Mitch McConnell, I think, knows he has at least 51 votes to sort of pass a set of rules that's not going to allow witnesses. But it's just, it's sort of...
Do you think it should be that way?
I do, because, you know, to hear Jerry Nadler suggest that somehow not calling witnesses is a cover-up, he's the one that didn't call any real witnesses in the House Judiciary Committee.
What about the flip? Because I've been saying all along that Democrats don't know what they're asking for because they don't know what Bolton would say.
They have no idea what Bolton's going to say.
I think it's kind of interesting. And by the way, given what they want, do we get to hear from everybody that Republicans? Can we hear from Hunter Biden? Why is that not game?
If we get over the precipice of witnesses, you should expect a floodgate of witnesses on both sides, and a process that really gets out of control because there's a lot of executive privilege issues. There's these national security questions, and I really just don't think.
You think it should be behind closed doors no matter who they talk with?
I think it should have been in the House, first of all. Second, I don't see a workable solution because it will devolve.
But we would have been waiting for years for that process, according to Democrats.
Leslie, I think that witnesses actually hurt both sides. I mean, for the president, I think that the case is what it is. Witnesses aren't going to help him. They could hurt him. For the Democrats, if there are going to be witnesses, then there's going to be the Bidens. So that's no good. I think witnesses hurt both sides. What do you think?
I think the witnesses can hurt both sides, but it also can help. For example, how many times do you hear, not just on the right, but on the left as well, well, you know, they weren't on the call or whatever. John Bolton was. John Bolton knows what was said. Why wouldn't the president and his defense team want John Bolton? And why are they having an emergency plan?
The president of the United States to have him talk. He's got a book coming out. He's not going to step on that. Democrats better be really careful.
Very true, but I think from where I sit, when you look at the emergency planning that's underway with the defense team, the impeachment defense team for the president regarding the possible testimony of John Bolton, they must know that he is going to squash their defense, and if that's the case, the American people deserve to hear that.
Don't you think that they already won, Republicans? So why would they want anyone to testify at this point, given the facts as they are? The president's not going to be impeached.
Yes, and you saw that in the brief yesterday from the team, from the legal team, is a focus on the two articles of impeachment. Do they rise to impeachable offenses? That is the gist of it. The second one, obstruction of Congress, is literally the president defending the power of the executive branch, defending the power of the office. And this, keep talking about witnesses, because this shines a light on the fact that John Bolton wasn't subpoenaed by the House. And in fact, Charles Kupperman went to court over his House subpoena. That's John Bolton's deputy. He was looking for guidance on whether privilege applied to his testimony. The House dropped it. So where are we now?
So Matt,
they're using it as a political talking point.
Quickly, because we're going to the bottom of the hour, I want to quickly get to you on material witness and Cipollone. Where do we go for that?
The president is entitled to have whomever he wants argue his case.
Can Democrats call his lawyer?
Well, you know, this is one of those things. It takes 51 votes to just do about anything in these rules that they're going to pass. I don't ultimately see Pat being a witness. I know he's a great lawyer.
Mitt Romney, Republican. Do you think he'd go for something like that? Lisa Murkowski,
so that gets you to 48. I think
Lamar Alexander. There's a handful of them.
At some point in time, regular order is, and these senators are going to defend the institution of the Senate and not have it devolve into some back and forth tit for tat like we saw in the House.
The political side of this is that, you know, Mitch McConnell and others are up for re-election. So, you know, the bulk of people that Leslie's talking about in the polling shows they want to hear from witnesses. The public just wants a full trial and then move on.
Monmouth University poll today, 57% say House managers should be able to present new evidence.
Few seconds. Your thoughts?
I don't expect, unless something dramatically changes in the presentation of the House case, I do not expect we'll see witnesses.
All right. We have a lot coming up this afternoon. And as we've known, 1 p.m. Eastern would be where everything would kick off. Ahead of that, we have an opportunity to see the coverage ramp up. We'll see the Chief Justice of the United States, John Roberts, and his swearing in for the proceedings to just get started in all of this. Matt Whitaker, thank you for being with us for this abbreviated version of Outnumbered. Glad to be here.